Good evening. Welcome to the Executive Scrutiny Committee meeting, 2nd of August. Do you have any apologies, please?
Chair, I've got apologies from Councillor Cooper. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Stephen. Any declarations of interest?
Sorry, Chair, not declarations of interest, but I don't think Mike Carr's going to be here today. So his apologies, please.
Minutes of the meeting held on the 4th of July and the 12th of July. They are attached. You've had an opportunity to look at those. If there's nothing that's urgent from those, we'll move on to item 6, Council Cabinet responses to scrutiny recommendations. Again, they are attached. And item 7, establishing a Derby local plan member working group. Now, I think this is Werner is going to lead on this, and I want to make a bid straight away. I'd like to be involved in that. So this is about the local plan, which touches on issues a number of us are concerned about. So I was going to invite Werner to speak, Lucy. Is anything?
Yeah, I was just going to go back to the minutes because I think we formally have to say they are correct. I can't move both of them because I wasn't at one of those meetings, but I think it's probably a good process.
Minutes of what? Sorry,
Just the minutes of the two meetings,
okay,
which we need to approve rather than just note.
Chair, I take it they're agreed.
Yeah, okay. Right, so is everybody happy with those minutes? Right, thank you. Werner, over to you. Thank you.
Chair, it won't be broadcast on the.
Forgive me. So we want to establish a member working group to support the work of the local plan. It will be a task and finish group, and it will oversee and advise on the preparation of the plan and planning policy that develops in line with the local plan, reporting to yourselves as Exec Scrutiny Board, making recommendations to the board, which then you can in turn make recommendation to Cabinet. So made up of 7 members drawn from proportionally across the political groups, and the chair will be nominated by the working party. And hopefully the intention is to do that on a rolling basis. Roughly quarterly, but flexibility in the terms of reference, because obviously there'll be key pinch points along the way as we develop that local plan. But really allowing that support and member contribution to develop this most important document for the city. So if you agree with those terms of reference today, then the report also seeks delegation to the monitoring officer, who will then seek nominations on that working group from across the council.
Thank you, Werner. I'm certainly very supportive of that, and if you can pass my interest on to the monitoring officer, I'll be grateful. Thank you. Lucy.
My interpretation, Chair, was that it would come as nominations from the group rather than individual nominations. So I think it may be you need to talk to your group whip or secretary or somebody. Anyway, I had 3 points. One was to say I really welcome the use of substitutes, because I think that will be helpful. Number 2 was, I think, the 3rd bullet point on the first page. I think it's the first page, I haven't got it in front of me, has a set of question marks after it, and somebody needs to deal with answering that or taking them away. And the 3rd point is that this is clearly going to be a working group that will be lasting longer than the next 9 months towards our next set of elections onwards. And I just wanted to know whether they were we needed to include in this the mechanism for ongoing appointment to this, and whether it needs to go through the annual meeting of the council and whether something along those lines ought to be included.
Okay, thank you. Any more comments before I bring Werner back in? No, none of that. Werner, any closing comments at all you'd like to make?
Not really. I think it's very, very exciting and very much looking forward to working with the group on this. I think on Councillor Kerr's point on the local plan and the transition, I will go back to the monitoring officer and seek some advice and clarification for you on that, if that's okay.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Werner.
Should we therefore delegate to yourself, Chair, to sort out any more small changes to the proposal?
Yeah, I'll be delighted to have that delegated to me, Lucy.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, is everybody happy with that? Yeah, I can say everyone's ecstatic at that prospect. Thank you. I'm not surprised, but there we go. Okay. Thank you. Joking apart, where are we? Item 8, Council Cabinet Agenda. So we're on to the agenda proper. And I think the first item on the agenda, apart from the recommendations of the Executive Scrutiny Board, which the matter referred, is number 8, Alistry Park Rewilding Project. Duncan, and would you like to introduce our guests, please?
Thank you, Chair. Yes, delighted to introduce Dr. Joe Smith, Chief Executive at Derbyshire Wildlife Trust, to give an overview of the vision for community rewilding of Alistry Park.
Thank you.
Hi everyone, delighted to be here and delighted to share our proposals for taking this initiative forward. As you remember, the first discussions about Alistry Park took place last summer, and the idea was to do something that would put Derby on the map in terms of being committed to doing something about climate action around the time of COP. It's been a very positive experience so far. What we've done is run a consultation process using a number of techniques and also holding a number of events across the city to collate people's ideas and views. And broadly, the response has been overwhelming. We've had lots of responses, both formally and informally. The public have been hugely positive, and the initiative has created extensive media, including in The Guardian and on the Today programme on Radio 4. We presented 3 broad options, and the vast majority of people want to see a community rewilding approach, which is the kind of middle ground, and that will mean the creation of spaces that work for lots of different audiences, as well as interventions to create habitats like ponds, orchards and grassland. So we're now ready to get started. The proposals include an outline programme, but the programme is just indicative at this stage because the actual delivery will be decided by a formalised partnership led by a steering group working closely with the people of Derby. We're excited to be getting going. We hope you're excited too. The initiative really helps to put the city on the map as a leader in the creation of sustainable, green and carbon neutral cities. And it hopefully enables both this council and other councils to think more carefully about the way they use their green spaces and create more and improve the ones that they have to create much greener, healthier, carbon friendly cities. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that, Joe. It is a very exciting project, and it'll be interesting to see what actually comes out at the end of the day, because there are a variety of options. I suppose it depends how much money and resources there actually are, and also it's making sure that we take on board the feedback that we've had from the public, because there's certain things that some members of the public would be a little bit hesitant about, maybe some about bicycles whizzing around at 40 feet through the trees. But other things, certainly about rewilding in terms of areas of wildflowers, etc., where I suspect the majority of people would be in favour of, which is also more easily doable as well. But so it'd be interesting to see that feedback. Any comments or observations at all from people? Alison, over to you. Thank you. And then Lucy. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Just a question. I could make broader comments, but I'll just stick my current comment to a question, really, which is... you say on the cycling, we will explore opportunities for a dedicated cycle route within a suitable area of the park. So can you elaborate a bit more, please, on what you mean by that and how extensive it's likely to be? Thanks.
I can. I mean, our main priority will be to get a cycle track to the site rather than on the site. That will be the priority in the first place. The response to the questions about cycling were quite mixed, and so we want to provide some space where people can cycle, but we will keep that quite minimal because that isn't actually one of the things that people really wanted to see. There was talk of mountain bike places and things like that, but that isn't what the community have said they wanted, and therefore that's definitely not a priority for delivery at this phase.
Can I just come back, Chair, please?
Yeah, sure.
Sorry to be a touch pedantic here, but can you just say a little bit more about what you actually mean then? I mean, obviously, because what you've said with respect just repeats what it says in the document. I mean, do you have, when you say a suitable area of the park, I mean, are you talking about an area the size of one of the meadows, or an area, which area are you thinking of? And would it be for mountain bikes? Would it just be across the grass, or is actually some form of track going to go in? Could you elaborate a bit more, please?
Well,
Joe, over to you.
Yeah, I mean, no, I can't really elaborate, because the whole point of this project is to work with the community to deliver what the community wants. So we'll need to do some further consultation on exactly what that looks like. But I think the concepts at the moment are probably to create a track around the outside of the site so that you can cycle around the sites, but that the wildlife areas are kept for people and for wildlife.
Thanks very much, Joe. Lucy, over to you.
Thank you, Chair. Let me first say that I have absolutely nothing against wanting to improve the biodiversity of Derby and the rewilding of places. If you saw our garden at the moment, you'd realise that wilderness is something that I can revel in. However, and I thought you people know that was coming, I am really sad that this document and the background documents seem to me to be over-egging the climate element to this. Climate change is going to be devastating. It's already being damaging to our biodiversity. And we do need to be mindful of that. But the rewilding and rewilding type actions are not dealing with the climate emergency itself. They are mitigating some of the impacts of it. And I think that the confusion that documents like this add to the wider understanding of what we need to do to combat climate change are actually quite damaging. Because rewilding the whole of Derby is not going to solve Derby's carbon footprint. And the sort of implication from this is that it's going to be great. Rewilding, doing the maximum we can with Alistry, is going to do less than 1% of Derby's carbon footprint. And these are figures that I've asked Andy Hills for from our climate unit. So it's good to be doing something, but I think this document leaves a great many questions, not just on cycling, but on a number of other things. It's making much better use of a resource of Alistry Park, which has been a resource that has been underutilised for years. But by bringing more people there, we will actually, not all those people will be coming by sustainable means. Some of them, it talks about coming from a distance. So those people will be adding their carbon footprints to reach Alistry Park as part of the factor of the work that we're doing. And that'll be a direct effect of improving the usefulness of Alistry Park, will add to the user's carbon footprints. And I don't see any comment about that in this document. And I think it should have been analysed. The Council has a carbon assessment tool, a carbon impact assessment tool. There's no mention of this going through it, and it is absolutely something that should go through it. So, and I've got a couple of other points, Chair, and I've got some recommendations. Because what this does is it presumes that this way forward is the best option for Alistry Park. Now, we know since we started this process last autumn, the proposal to sell off the hall has fallen flat, and we no longer have a buyer for the hall. So we now have the hall and park potentially both available, and options for that. There were rumours that there are golf course options and things wanting to come in on the golf course side. And that is also not being considered, and potentially the way in which the Wildlife Trust could work with an operator of a golf course to improve the carbon sequestration within a golf course, because I understand, and I think there is still ongoing research on this, that you can sequester more carbon into grassland than you can into woodland. The woodland soils, and compared with grassland soils, actually have less carbon in them. What happens to your trees afterwards may make a difference, but there's no guarantee that your tree will remain as part of something like a desk here for the next 1,000 years.
Thank you, Lucy. Yeah, just before I bring Alison back in and then Hardiel, there are a few points, because I've had people contact me in terms of the document saying, well, what can the public expect to see when? What are the costs of what's being proposed? Is the tree line experience, cycling through the tops of trees, a little bit over-ambitious? There are some people who are being a little bit maybe cynical, maybe sceptical, but as Lucy refers to, talking about greenwashing, and that perhaps also, as Lucy said, perhaps a bit of contradiction in terms where people are increasing their carbon footprint to get to a park which is trying to reduce the carbon footprint. Maybe that bit is being oversold. So there are bits of confusion there.
Can I just
yeah, sure, Joe.
Okay. So I think there's two things. So one is that no one would ever claim that rewilding Alistry Park would solve all of big cities' carbon problems. But I do think that one of the problems that we face as a society is helping people to understand carbon and the impact of their behaviours, and actually encouraging people to connect to wildlife and to understand the impacts of wildlife is a very important part of getting that message across. And it will have substantial carbon benefits to the city. Obviously, we haven't provided those numbers yet, but we have done some calculations, and it depends a little bit on the exact way that we proceed. So that's why we haven't actually published any data yet. But those calculations have been done and have been externally verified, because we work with external accreditors on all of our carbon projects right across Derbyshire. And then I think just on your point around grassland sequestering carbon, I think grassland does sequester carbon, but grassland on a golf course, the sequestering of carbon is going to be very, very small. I think tall meadow grassland does sequester quite a lot of carbon. Very short, very regularly cut grass does not.
Thank you, Joe. I'll bring in, because the issue has been raised as well, about whether the collapse of the Alistry Hall deal will have any impact on what's being planned in the park, but we'll perhaps touch on that later, hopefully. Hardiel, sorry, it's Alison then Hardiel. Alison and then Hardiel.
Thank you, Chair, for indulging me for a third time. But I just would like to press the point, if I may. Actually, I think with respect, this is your first, a starter for 10 for engaging with the community on this. I am an elected representative of the community, actually elected. I do represent a ward that's adjoins pretty much close to Alistry Park, and for what it's worth, I practically lived there and I know the park like the back of my hand. And what I know, having been, unlike, sadly, the cabinet member and any local Conservative councillors, I did attend the walks with Dave Winslow around the park to discuss rewilding. And so one of the early major concerns was the idea of red deer or deer. And I see that's not been developed. I mean, the problem with that would be, of course, having to have all those large fences, which I cannot believe the council would ever have the money to fund. But there were other concerns with that. The next concern is the cycling. Now, I'm largely in favour of this project, and I think that there are issues around the claims it's making, as Lucy says, but on the other hand, it is about biodiversity, and I think that's another important thing. I'm also in favour of cycling, but I think, I think that people will be reassured if you could give some sort of idea about what you mean by a cycle route, because you're saying, on the one hand, you want a suitable area of the park, then you're saying you're going to put it around the whole park. Well, of course, the park is absolutely surrounded by woods. The outer part of the park is woods. So, I mean, I think it would be helpful if you were able to give some idea of what you mean by that and mountain biking, because that is the thing that is concerning people the most in terms of users of the park. Thanks.
Thanks, Alison. Joe, do you want to come back about cycling?
Well, I mean, I think, as I've said a few times now, we want to work with the community on building the plans from here. So we will be... Well,
I'm just asking you to respond to a representative of the community, that's all.
And I guess I'm saying that we will be talking further with the community about exactly what we mean by cycling. Now we've got the consultation results.
Well, I'm just giving you that opportunity to try it now, but you're obviously not going to do it. Thanks.
Well, we want to consult with everybody, don't we? Not one person. So we look forward to talking to you outside the room about your thoughts, for sure.
No, I think this is a public forum. I'll shut up, Chair. You want me to shut up. But this is a public forum full of councillors who are, each and every one of them is elected to represent people. We do represent the community. But thank you, Chair. I'll shut up.
Yeah, thank you. I've got 2 points. Firstly, I mean, anything that enables more biodiversity and green for the benefit of the people of Derby is going to be welcomed. But I do, and I'll come back to that, but I do have sympathy and support for Councillor Kerr's points, particularly about the carbon assessment tool and being as objective as possible of the benefits and what length of benefit we were going to have from for climate change and carbon capture or reducing carbon footprint. And that would be something, I don't know if it's, Lucy, it'll be part of your recommendation. And if it is, I would be supportive of that. We do need to have clarity and objectivity about what the impact will be, positive and negative, of the climate change potential for rewilding Allistory Park. So that would be really helpful, and if it's not there, I'll probably want to sort of recommend something on that nature, on that side. The second bit, we talk about the community, and community can be people living in and around Allistory Park, or it could be wider, and I think the documents and you talk about wider than that, and making accessibility much easier, as easy as possible, hopefully encouraging less vehicle polluting use and more walking and cycling. One thing I'm interested in is how does that, and I don't think I've seen anything in the report, and please point me towards it if it's in there, how do constituents like mine in the inner city area of Normanton, for example, and further south where we've got more deprived communities who possibly don't get an opportunity to access green spaces even now, even without this, So what plans or consideration has been given to how we enable an opportunity for access and enjoyment of whatever we finally come to develop within here around rewilding and open access space and biodiversity?
Thanks, Chair. Do you want to come back, Joe?
Just very quickly, I mean, we lead one of the green social prescribing pilots, so the 7 national pilots across the whole country looking at how we can engage a whole variety of audiences in wellbeing experiences, and we actually run sessions in Normanton, and so we know that community very well. We really want to make this an accessible place where everyone feels welcome, and we want to work really hard to make sure that that happens. There are some big obstacles and some big barriers in doing so, but we are determined to overcome them and to make sure that this is a place where everybody is welcome and everybody actually goes to visit.
Thank you, Joe.
I'd welcome any plans or details that you develop in that regard as a local council in the Normanton area.
I'd be delighted to share a bit more, either individually or at a future meeting, about what that can look like. And we're working really hard in that space right across the city, and working really well with lots of the teams at Derby City Council as well, to look at, because what we want Allistory Park to be is not just the biggest rewilding project in the UK, but also to stimulate lots of other smaller, similar projects right across the country. And that's already happening. We're already getting lots of councils coming to us asking us for advice on what they can do. We're getting lots of other green space organisers and people who run green spaces across Derby City coming to us and asking us what they can do. And that's part of the snowballing effect of this project, and that's what's really exciting.
Thank you. Nicola.
Thank you, Chair. I think it's really important that we sort of focus here. It's really difficult for me to understand how quickly Councillor Martin has criticised the information that's been provided here as not being sufficient enough, and that she feels that a few dozen people who scream loudest at her within her Darley ward should have the say. Yet there's been 1,034 individuals that have been taken part in the survey. There's 1,008 people who've participated and given ideas. There have 365 taken individual polls, and even 301 that attended a single online meeting. I think, you know, ultimately we need to listen to those individuals. Absolutely, we're here to represent, and we are elected at a point in time. And at a point in time when Councillor Martin was elected, this wasn't on the table. It's been put on the table since. And I think it's important that we do look at the bigger picture. We are here to represent, absolutely, and I take on board every comment that is made by any councillor. But the whole point of doing surveys and getting information and actually doing consultation with people is to get a current view, and it's not just the people who scream loudest, as we saw with the golfers at the time. It should be a bigger picture of what is right for the city. I think it's a shame that, you know, people are saying, are we being too ambitious? I think we're not being ambitious enough. There's more to do. You know, people are criticising, oh, we're overselling this. You've got to start somewhere. And the fact that we're not, you know, for me, this is the beginning to start that process to escalate, to get more involvement, as Claire's pointed out there. And it's a shame, really, that we're still trying to bring the negative points to this, when actually it's a brilliant thing for Derby and a real positive. You know, to be the biggest in the country of rewilding project is another really ambitious thing for Derby, and I'm really proud of it. So thank you.
Yeah, I think in actual fact, we're probably pushing an open door here, because I think both are right. Both those 1,034 people you refer to, Nicola, have a very good, valid point, but also the 11,000 people that Councillor Martin represents are also valid in their views, and the 12,000 people in Alistry. So I think we're agreeing on the same thing. Both the views of all those people that have taken part, and certainly councillors who represent 11,000 people, their views are very valid as well. And both Duncan and Joe are nodding and saying, yeah. And I'm sure that, I don't want to put words in them up, but they're saying we want to hear all points of view, because it's vital. It's vital we get this right for the people of Derby, and we'll only do that by debating it. And yes, and I'm sure Joe understands that, you know, it can be a bit sort of bruising sometimes coming here, but it's only people asking these things because of their passion to try to get it right. And I know you take that on board, Joe, that we're desperate to get it right. So,
and just very quickly, just to reassure everyone, really, that we are working with several universities on this to measure and to demonstrate the impact that we're making, and to share that openly with everybody. So there are no secrets. I guess the secrets are just that we want to, we've got a lot of experience at Wildlife Trust of building community projects, and you can't tell people what they want. You have to work with them to deliver what they want, and that's what we're trying to do.
Joe, did you want to quickly come back, Alison?
Very, very quickly, Claire, Chair, because I know you have indulged me. I mean, no one screamed at me about this, to be honest. I mean, this is a scrutiny board for councillors, and that's why the document has come here. I mean, nobody's been negative about it. I've expressed my support for the scheme, which I've actually done on social media recently, and had a like from Jerry Pierce. I said I'm in favour of cycling when I am. I simply asked for a bit of an idea of what she meant in relation to that particular point, given that, you know, I know the park well, and I hope by now she does, because it doesn't seem to make much sense. Now, if she's saying she can say nothing more at that stage, you know, that's what we can accept. But I think it's part of the role of this board to ask those questions and to point out that, you know, this is the point that is giving people the most anxiety now that they've dropped the deer. And I know this partly because I went round in the rain, this pouring rain, with the people who turned up for the consultation as well. So I fully respect the views of those who have responded. And this is really just a point of for extra information on the basis of the information given, and that's what Scrutiny is about. Thank you.
Thank you, Alison. I'm sure Duncan and Joe have taken on board all the comments tonight, which I think the bottom line are given in an honest and positive way. But there are issues that need to be addressed and be open about that, and everybody wants to be. So I say, well, I think we're all pushing an open door and agreeing the same thing. So thank you very much, Joe and Duncan, for coming along. I think Lucy probably wants to make a recommendation.
I have 4 recommendations.
Mystic Martin strikes.
I have 4 recommendations, which I've sort of rolled into one, but they're called 1, 2, 3 and 4. So it's to ask Cabinet not to take forward this decision until, and some of Sorry. I've got thoughts. No, Chair, I haven't introduced a couple of them, but other people have alluded to some of the points. So the number one is ask Cabinet not to take forward this decision until, one, a broader review of options for Allestree Park has been presented, including the impact of separate use of the hall for education, resuming use as a golf course, as well as the rewilding options in the report. Now, there may be other things that could be considered as well, so it says including those items. But I don't think there's nothing in the report today that actually looks at the hall and park now both being available and what potential opportunities that creates, which wasn't available when we started this process.
Before you go to the others, can we leave this book? Because I can see there are a number of people looking a bit quizzical about it, so I want to deal with each recommendation.
That's right.
I want to bring Nicola's indicated she wishes to speak to that, and I think I ought to bring her in. Nicola.
Thank you, Chair. I just think we need to stop procrastinating on these decisions. We need to start to develop these ideas going forward. These decisions have been made at Cabinet from what I can understand, and the plan is, to proceed. I don't think we should keep pausing projects and restarting and looking at other options. That's the point of consultations as decisions have been made, and I think we should go forward. I think it's really difficult at this point in time to start backpedaling on such a point. So I think we should just carry on. And sorry, Lucy, I don't agree.
Thanks, Chair. I think the main issue that I've got, which I think most people will see, is Lucy's trying to tie in the two different aspects of the park, the hall and the rewilding. And quite obviously, there is a problem with the hall, and I think that needs to be addressed separately.
Councillor Martin.
Well, it may surprise some to hear this, and given the way my words were interpreted earlier, but I have to say that, I do want this project to progress, so I don't think it should be revisited. The fact that the hall has fallen through is a major source of concern, but I don't think halting everything is going to progress anything very positively, and so I couldn't support this. Thank you.
Right, I think we ought to go to the vote and deal with this one, Lucy.
Chair,
and then you can go to this, please. No, I would like us to vote on this one.
Chair, you have to have a seconder first.
Yeah.
Chair, I just want to point out that if the hall is available, then some of the options that have been put forward in the rewilding may become available, such as things like a cafe or an information centre. So the knowledge of the hall being available is absolutely part
Lucy,
of the
do you have a
rewilding
seconder?
scheme.
Is there a seconder for this motion? No, I'm sorry, that one falls. Do you want to go through your others, please, Lucy?
Okay. The second point, and again I'm asking Cabinet not to take forward this decision until the proposals have been reviewed through the Climate Impact Assessment tool to consider both the potential for carbon sequestration and the impacts of proposed additional users of the park.
Is there a seconder for that?
Chair, I think progressing the project, but making sure we're clear and objective about the clarity of what the benefits are going to be and how extensive they're going to be is something that should be considered as the project progresses. And I think we need the reality of that. So on that basis, and if it does mean that climate assessment tool is used, which is available, and I think it does link to our council's resolution about climate impact on any report, never mind this one, is something that we need to sort of fully integrate into this and sort of without sort of stopping the progress, but we need to be realistic about what it will achieve, and if that can help to do that, I would support seconding this resolution.
So what seems to be being suggested is that it's not intended to delay doing anything that we're actually doing with regard to the rewilding, but it's to get this information alongside it, because it's important to have that, so people, at least there's that degree of openness and honesty, which is probably reasonable. Nicola.
I think we can just clarify with officers, I would assume, and I'm sure I'll get a nod, that this would automatically be done as part of the projects as a whole. I appear to be getting some nods there, so I just don't think we need a recommendation on it, Chair.
Chair, may I come back on that?
No, I'm going to ask officers first of all to see if officers, can you give any indication whether those tests can be met and that information can be given?
Yes, and that was already answered as part of Joe's response previously about working in universities and measuring it. So yes.
Okay, so what we've had from officers, we've had reassurance about that information will be given. Any idea timescale when we'll have that information, Duncan or Joe?
Microphone. Well, I mean, it's a little bit chicken and egg because it depends. There's still some parameters that haven't been absolutely decided, but we can certainly give some different options and some different calculations associated. Yeah, for sure. Definitely within 6 months. Yeah. Yeah.
Thank you, Chair. Councillor Kerr, I think you're reinventing the wheel again and sort of overcomplicating things. Surely this, Chair, is an ideal issue and project to be brought to the cross-party working group that we have for climate change. It seems entirely appropriate for this to be part of that if those involved, including Councillor Kerr, wish it to be brought to them for discussion and input. Positive input. So for me, that mechanism is already there and it seems a natural home.
A recommendation to bring to the cross-party climate. Councillor Dinser, over to you.
Yes, I mean, I think Councillor Holmes does make a good point, but I would have expected that to happen before, because, you know, if we have a climate change, and I think it was a previous meeting of the Executive Scrutiny Board where one or two councillors referred to the climate change cross-party working group on a number of agenda items we had previously to refer them. In many cases, I assumed this would have gone into that process as part of our normal course of things, particularly when climate change aspirations were in that. So, I mean, I think I take on board Councillor Holmes' point about using that group, because that's what it's there for. And we spoke at length in this Executive Scrutiny Board last meeting, where a number of times it was referred to. But I think maybe it's time that the council begins to use that group, not after the event, but as part of the process. And I think the officers' response to giving some clarity and confirmation of whether this is going to happen or not going to happen is there, but it wasn't totally convincing to me. And I think, so therefore, it will happen, I'm sure, but I think this recommendation will actually help to focus minds and bring something back at an appropriate time, and not 3 months, 6 months, or has the project impact review happens, as the university will be doing, I'm sure, over the whole period.
This committee obviously have to make a decision soon whether those reassurances are definitely within 6, hopefully within 3, and refer to the climate change, whether that's enough or not, whether it wants more authority put behind it by having a commitment from Cabinet. Lucy, I've got you down. I'm going to take you now. Thank you.
Thank you. The climate change assessment tool that Derby has used from elsewhere and has tweaked for itself is designed to help make the sorts of decisions that Joe has described that will be taken in the next 3 to 6 months. It's not something that you use to say analytically what is going to be the carbon footprint of this project. Some of those figures would feed into it. It's to encourage the people who understand the project and the possibilities of the project to explore the pluses and minuses. So I would like them to postpone a decision on this for maybe only a month and bring it back in September so that they can consider these additional points. It's not throwing it away. It's not saying we don't want to do it. It's saying let's make sure we're making the right decision. And that,
Lucy,
I think, Chair, is one of the roles of scrutiny.
Yeah, but you've already heard, you picked up the previous meeting where nobody seconded it because they didn't want any delay. If this is going to delay it, then I'm getting people from different parties here nodding they don't want that. Hardy, I'll let you come in.
I mean, we shouldn't need to delay anything, but I think if we put a recommendation to Cabinet to say that tool is used to give better informed information as we progress, rather than delaying it to sort of bring it back, that I think is just to focus minds to use the tool, and hopefully it'll encourage future times when there's climate change aspirations put in reports, that we use the tools that we have in the council anyway.
Anybody else wish to speak on this at all? But I'm getting people from different parties saying that they're not happy about anything that would delay it. And I think we've picked that up. Lucy, do you want to put it to the vote?
Forget the delay. Let's have the thing to be considered by Cabinet and
well,
progress.
I mean, if it was of a mind that Cabinet to endorse this and to ensure that it happens within a 3 to 6 month period and that it goes to climate change and that it wouldn't delay the project, if it was something like that, then you might get support. I think you would probably get support, Lucy. Are you prepared to accept that?
So if
or do you want to put it, or no, Lucy, or put it as it is, and I suspect it will be voted down.
So, Chair, to ask Cabinet to ask Cabinet for the proposal to be reviewed through the climate change impact tool to consider both the potential carbon sequestration and the impacts of proposed additional uses of the park.
Put your microphone on, please.
Chair, I mean, I would propose that we do not delay. We sort of, you know, we've said everything we need to say.
Motion or
yeah, I'm going to propose. I'm proposing.
Right.
That,
okay.
yeah,
You're making your own proposal.
Because I think Lucy. Hopefully, Lucy would. That we do not delay, but we do look to see how the climate assessment tool and impacts can help to inform better the progress of what the implications.
You request Cabinet to
request Cabinet to use the assessment, the Council's climate change assessment tool, to better inform the impact of the rewilding of Alistair generally, but also in particular to do with climate change advantages and disadvantages.
Okay. Do you want to second it for that?
Chair, can I just clarify that this is the exact conversation we had a minute ago, where we clarified that before anything is done to move this project forward, those tools would be used as part of the project plan. So I get where we're going from. We all want to be very, you know, dotting I's and crossing T's, but I just think we're going round in circles. So can we just agree that this, you know, this will be done, and we've had officer assurance that that is part of ongoing plans and procedures?
Chair, I'm not exactly sure what it says. Chair, I'm not completely sure what the proposal was, but I can read out my proposal, which no longer says the bit at the beginning. But Chair, my point was going to be that I'm not sure that either the officer or the representative from the Wildlife Trust know what is included within the Council's climate impact assessment tool, because it is very new. So, well, may I reread my amended version? Sorry? May I reread my amended version?
You reread it and then we'll see if there's a second for it. Yeah.
To ask Cabinet to request that the proposals are reviewed through the Council's climate impact assessment tool to consider both the potential for carbon sequestration and the impacts of proposed additional uses of the park.
I have every trust in officers that they're going to get this right, and there's going to be a whole heap of work in this area and consultation and discussions to get it right. I'm struggling to understand what the outcome of that would be. I just don't think there's actually any purpose, to be honest, Chair.
Do you wish to speak? Do you wish to second what Lucy said?
Councillor Rolston said that the officers have made it clear that they will do this.
Yeah.
Can we get a response? Because I didn't hear that the first time the officers responded. They said that there's a university will be doing an impact, which is true, and they will be doing it long term. But this is about at the beginning. So if Councillor Rolston's statement can be confirmed by the officers, yeah. Thank you.
Thank you, Hardy. Can you reassure us?
Yes.
That will definitely happen.
Yes.
Thank you. I suspect that you're not putting forward a recommendation or seconding one. No, that one falls. Have you got any more, Lucy?
Chair. The third point is to ask, again, I'd like all this information to be on the table for Cabinet before they make this decision. But if other people think it's sufficient to ask afterwards, then that is fine. I like to have the data in front of me. But to ask for further information to be presented on how rewilding of Alice Street will result in the rewilding of other parts of Derby, where the biodiversity gains could be much greater than in Alice Street Park, because Alice Street Park is pretty green already.
Councillor Martin.
I do agree, actually, with Councillor Kerr's latter point, that it is already a very wild park. I would very much hope there can be more visitors to the park. I hope, Councillor Dinser, that there will be activities available for people from Norman and children to go there and use the park, and others will be encouraged to use the park. I think the diversity of use of the park has actually increased since the golf course ended, in my anecdotal observations. But I have to say, Councillor Kerr, that I think that you can't, when some things are kind of, it's not experimental, but it's a first, you can't then guarantee what else will follow. It just, that's not how things work. Again, I'm sorry, but I can't support your recommendation because I think that this is new. It's got a lot of national attention. It will have people coming up to visit it. There is an intention to extend necessary greening of other spaces, Normanton hopefully in particular. But we can't correlate, what happens in Alice Street Park will happen in Normanton, and nor should we, because it's the people of Normanton who should say that. So I don't support your
do you have a seconder for Lucy's recommendation? No, sadly we don't. Is there a fourth one, Lucy?
Yes, Chair, there's a fourth one. And this I'm raising because of the experience we had in some of the climate change. Sorry, I'm raising this because of the experience we've had, this point I'm about to make, in terms of the climate, part of the climate budget being used for the short-term urban wood forest that we currently have in the marketplace. Because that...
Chair, sorry, I don't see what this has to do with this current point.
Lucy, can you be a bit more pointed? Thank you.
There is information provided on both available both organisational and financial capacity for potentially greater net gains in carbon sequestration, social benefits and wildlife elsewhere in the city. So what I'm saying is, yes, it's lovely to do something in Alice Street, but if we put all our eggs in Alice Street, our organisational and our financial eggs and our bidding eggs into Alice Street, what will miss out elsewhere in the city, because we only have so much money and we only have so much time and capacity?
I'm getting a shaking of heads. I'll ask officers to come back, because I think I'm getting a shaking of heads from other councillors and officers that doesn't seem to be anybody's intention or aim. Duncan?
Clear, Chair, I absolutely agree. It's not the intention, but it's a question that we as Scrutiny should be asking.
So what are you making a recommendation, or what would you like to ask officers?
I would like, before Cabinet make a decision on Alice Street rewilding, I want them to consider what the implications are for the social benefits, the carbon sequestration and the wildlife gains elsewhere in the city by putting all our interest at the moment into Alice Street Park.
But that's a way of going back and delaying this, isn't it?
No, I'm saying the Cabinet need to make that decision with all the information in front of them. They may still make the same decision. It might be the right decision. But unless we have the information, unless they have the information, they can't make a true, accurate, data-led decision.
Help us, Councillor Holmes.
Thank you, Chair. Once again, Chair, I'd suggest to Councillor Kerr, this sits firmly, in my view, with the partnership, the cross-party climate change partnership that we have in the council. That can inform Cabinet on these exact issues. So I just encourage that this really needs to be taken offline to the body that you sit on with colleagues across this council. And deal with it there, and the mechanism is there for you to then inform Cabinet on that exact thing.
Now, look, we've spent almost an hour on one item. We've got 7 other items. If we spend an hour then, we're going to be here till 2, 3 in the morning, and I'm not going to allow that to happen. I don't want to curb debate, but this is getting I'm stretching my tolerance, I think, here, so I need to bring this to a close shortly. I'm going to ask officers to try to respond to Lucy's concerns, and we've got a recommendation from Councillor Holmes that this is probably best dealt with in the way he suggested. Any observations, Duncan?
Yeah, happy to agree with Councillor Holmes, but yeah, I think this is only a good project to learn from across the city and to see how it can be. Lessons can be learned for increasing biodiversity on other sites. We're already doing plenty of that with quite a number of measures on local nature reserves and parks and verges. So, yeah, difficult to comment.
Thank you, Duncan. Nicola, you wanted to come in, and then I do want to draw this to a conclusion. If you've got a recommendation, Lucy, we'll hear it, and we'll see if there's a seconder, then we'll move on. Nicola.
I was trying to think of a good anecdote to basically say, so we've just stopped doing anything in case we can't do anything else. You know, the point for me is that we've got to carry on, and you know, a good example of the things that can be learnt from these sorts of projects are groups external from the council, like Friends of Spondon's Parks, that do some fantastic work with volunteers and community groups, and this helps to them to embrace and learn from partners. And the point is, nothing is actually decided yet, so we can't give a definite impact assessment or view, because these things are being worked on in a partnership approach with communities' input. And I think we're just jumping the gun a little bit, and I think it should be part of that working group, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Montague, if I can give you sort of 30 seconds, please, then I want to draw it to a close, please. We will be here till 2 in the morning.
Well, to end on a good-natured point, I hope, is that I would recommend that Councillor Kerr takes a walk in Allistory Park, looks at the harebells and think, wow, they've suddenly got harebells in Allistory Park, and thinks about that, not entirely on a data that can't possibly be acquired before the fact. Thank you.
Can I recommend Councillor Martin? I think that's a very good offer. Will you meet up with Councillor Kerr and take her and show her Allistory Park? Because you know it so well. I know you'd love to do that, so I'll get you two together to go and have a coffee together and have a walk around Allistory Park. Thank you very much. Lucy, no more recommendations, I presume?
I feel very sadly, Chair, that the shortcomings I felt that in this report that I would have liked to have been presented to us tonight and to Cabinet tomorrow aren't going to be included before the Cabinet make their decision. I hope that Cabinet approve it, and I hope that all the answers come out over the next few months.
I will make sure, Lucy, that, and I know that my other colleagues from the Conservative group are nodding, that they'll make sure their colleagues are aware of these concerns and worries, and that they are. And thank you, Nicola. Nicola's nodding, and officers also similar nodding. They've taken that on board, and I think, in fairness, Lucy, they've taken that on board genuinely. So I think it probably has been a good investment of an hour. I'll leave others to decide whether I'm correct or deluded or not on that, but I think it has been a good use of that hour, because that message has now got across. Thank you very much, officers. Thank you, Joe, and you please go and enjoy the rest of the evening. We'll be here till probably 2 o'clock. Right, okay, item 9, extension of delegation to approve affordable housing schemes. Who's taking us through this, please? Ian. Thank you, Ian.
Thank you, Chair. Members will recall that it's a council ambition to increase both the scale and the pace of how we build and buy more affordable housing within the city. And as part of that, last August, Cabinet approved to delegate investment decisions of up to £2.5 million to the Cabinet member, the Strategic Director, and the Section 151 officer. And the reason, or the prime reason for this, was to enable the council to compete quickly in a hot property market where it's often necessary to move quickly to secure the purchase of a house or a piece of land. The investment decision, up to £2.5 million, must be contained within the council's approved capital programme, which is approved by Cabinet each year, and it must also meet the normal payback criteria that we use. This has been trialled for a year, and during that year we've acquired 17 properties through this delegated route. sure enough, the big gain from an officer perspective has been that we have been able to move much more quickly than if we had to go to a formal cabinet member meeting. And then as the report details, there has been some savings in terms of officer time, and there will have been some saving in terms of member time as well, but we haven't tried to calculate that. The current report before you requests a continuation of this delegation for a period of 3 years, and I should stress that this delegation can be removed at any time by Cabinet in the future. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Ian. Comments, observations, questions from anybody at all? Lucy, thank you.
Chair, I have a feeling that it was as a result of a recommendation from the Scrutiny that it was due to be reviewed after 10 months. Given that it's taken 2 months to get to this meeting, I think it was good timing, so I think we should gently pat ourselves on the back and say, keep going.
Ian?
Yes, Chair, that's quite correct. It was 10 months. We reviewed it in 10 months, and as Councillor Kerr pointed out, it gave us 2 months to get it here. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Ian. Okay, if there's no other comments or observations, that's... Thank you very much, Ian. If you wish to depart, please do so. Item 10, property transactions. Who's taking us through that?
I am, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
I'll try and be quick, and so we can beat the 2 a.m. deadline. This report is seeking consent to declare surplus 2 properties. It's also seeking consent for the disposal of those properties. The property also seeking delegated authority to agree the detailed terms of the subsequent transactions. The 2 properties are the Rycote Centre, which is based off Parker Street. If members not aware of that property, it's a large property built in the early 70s, so it's over 50 plus years old. It's in poor condition, very expensive to maintain, high running costs, and to bring it back into a base figure, we're considering a figure around £600,000. Therefore, we don't think it's financially viable to refurbish the building to meet current requirements. The building is essentially vacant now. The main user of the building was the Adult Learning Service. They've been moved out to Kedleston Road, which is just down the road, and other locations. The sole occupier at the moment is the Derby Deaf Club, and they have a very active, or used to have a very active social thing to support the deaf community. However, since the COVID lockdown, they've not been able to have any meetings. We've worked with them and identified a suitable location where they can go to, and we're in the process of agreeing terms for them to move in. They're very positive about they're going, and they're looking forward to relaunching their service in the new premises going forward. The other premises is an area of land off top of Bridge Street, opposite, it's in the middle of the university campus, opposite their business centre and halls of residence. It was acquired and it's held in the housing revenue account for housing. However, the Derby University have approached us to say, as it's in the middle of their campus, would we sell it to them? Obviously, we've done had a look at this, and while the site is marginally viable from a housing perspective, I think the greater benefit is to let the university have it to work it up as part of their master plan, which sort of develops or promotes how they're going to use their campus around in that area. So the recommendation is we declare it surplus and obviously negotiate with the university. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, John. Comments and observations. I've got Hardiel first of all. Hardiel.
Thank you, Chair. I mean, I think the Rycote Centre, in terms of disposal, the only issue I had was that making sure that the Derby Deaf Club and the British Deaf Association were relocated, and the report actually indicates that.
Yes, we've got alternative locations.
And for commercial reasons, and that we can't identify where that is at the moment. Hope to have that concluded. So that is welcome, because the Derby Deaf Club is one I've had dealings with previously, and they do some really great work, and they put disability like deafness and how to overcome it and work on that very effectively. And so I'm pleased to hear that. So on that basis, supportive of that. And the second one with the land at Bridge Street, clearly anything that can help transform the Derby University's relocation near the city centre and the business school in terms of enhancing and developing, and the plans that we have got for that would be a welcome action as far as I'm concerned, so I'd be supportive of that. The only question I just want to clarify, the report indicates a small number of residential developments work being considered for that. How much of an impact is that going to be on our overall plan in terms of targets for housing within the city? Because we do know that people living in the city are going to developments which are outside the city, because our space, our curtilage of our city centre is limited, and despite all our best efforts across political parties to expand our borders, more and more people are having to leave and go to developments outside the city. What sort of impact will it make, and is that being accommodated somewhere else within the city? That's the only question I have for the officers.
Okay, just before I bring John back, and you can be mulling over an answer for Hardiel, I'm one of the ward councillors, as Councillor Martin is for Darley Ward. I understand why these proposals have been brought forward. My concern is a bit further down the line, especially with some of the things that have been going on the last week in our area. That's a large area. I just wondered, I know we need to get a capital receipt from it, but I'd want to make sure that we try and influence in as positive way as possible what may go on there, because it's a large area which backs onto West Avenue. It's fronted, a small frontage onto Kedleston Road by the side of Hawthorne Court, a home for retired people of a certain age, and your main entrance, I don't know how wide that is, but that's onto Parker Street. So it's trying to have some positive influence over that, because if we get that wrong, we can make people's lives a misery in that area. And we're seeing some I'm going to say rogue, but I'll withdraw the word rogue. We're having some developers coming forward who I think people question their actual motive. Well, we know the motive is financial, but we want to get this right. We have some control at the moment. Once we sell it to Sue, Grabberton Run, or whoever it is, they'll do whatever they want within the lax system that we currently have in this city. And I'm wanting us to have some reassurance, hopefully, for ourselves as councillors and for local people, that we'll retain some control and we'll try and influence it positively. So there's Hardiel's comments and mine. Thank you, John.
Yes, thanks. Yeah, perhaps I'll take your comments first. I think I share your concerns. What we want to do is making sure we get a development on that site, or a future use of that site that's compatible with the area and meets the council requirements. And I think we would be looking to structure a deal so that as much as we can, is to sort of say, yes, if you want to build there, we will structure a deal so we want you to be doing what you're saying you're doing before we actually transfer the freehold. There's ways and techniques to do that, rather than just put a board up and go into auction and we just say, well, fine, thanks, pocket the money and use your phrase, run, but we won't be running. But I think I share your concerns on that, and I think we would want to be sure that that is...
I'm reassured, John, thank you.
On Hardiel's question, on the Bridge Street site, I've got no exact figures of what was actually done on there, because I don't think any detailed real feasibility was done. But it's a relatively small site. Yes, no development of housing on the site will affect numbers, but it's a very, very small and marginal effect on the overall housing figures. Obviously, I'm not the housing expert on that.
Ian, thank you very much.
Thank you, Chair. As John was saying, clearly it's not ideal, but on balance for the city, even my own team in housing recognise it is a better use of the site to help the university develop in that area. This particular site wasn't programmed within the next year for development. It needs demolition works on there, so it wasn't programmed to be redeveloped for a couple of years. And I am confident, Chair, that within a couple of years we will be able to use the receipt that we get in for the site and our other resources to go and find another site on the open market, Chair, where we can build affordable housing. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that. Nicola.
Just a couple of points on this one. The Rycote Centre, I've probably not been to for 5 to 10 years since I was last doing something there, and it was pretty run down and in need of repair back then. So I can see the rationale for deciding that this has lived its useful life. It does beg the question, though, in terms of whilst we're looking at Derby Homes and the impact of the other alternative site going out of that, whether this could be considered as part of that or whether it's been thought of. In terms of there's two good accesses, and it's obviously residential and surrounding it, so whether that would be a viable option to be considered. But I would also recommend that we do get a commercial income from the university. They do have funds available, and as a council we shouldn't just be gifting it away.
I'll pick up the commercial side that yes, there is a positive sum of money being talked about, so it's not for nothing. I think Ian will pick up a bit the Rycote side, I think.
Thank you, Chair. The team working with Derby Homes have done an appraisal of the site, and because of the problems you were talking about earlier, members, it's just not financially feasible for us to put an affordable housing scheme on there. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Ian.
Chair, can I just sort of support that thing to reassure members that when we do look at properties like this, our first port of call is our strategic housing colleagues to have that conversation with them, because we recognise that we want to use our resources to support that agenda.
Thank you, John. Alison.
So I may have missed something here, but if you bear with me. So I think it's not clear to me exactly what is planned for the site, but also I'm concerned that obviously ourselves as local councillors and Councillor Swan need to be kept appraised of the situation as it's ongoing, but also will there be some consultation with local residents about what happens to the site? Thank you.
John?
I presume you're talking about Rycote. Yeah. I think there's no future plans, so we don't know what the market want for the site at the moment. As I said earlier, we will consult with yourselves as representatives of local people to get views on potential uses for the site. Obviously, it's the planning process as well. What like I said earlier, what I want to try and do is link all that together through the transaction, so we've got control of it, so we know exactly what's going on, and they actually deliver what they say they're going to do. And it may be in that process we do talk to yourselves about what people are proposing, but it's a difficult one to do until we know what the market is, there's ideas for the area.
Thank you, John. Nicola and then Lucy. Nicola.
Just to reiterate that, we can't, it's a chicken or an egg situation until it's sold and until planning permission's put in place. We don't have a LAC system as described earlier. It is quite a robust planning procedure that we have here at the council, and that does go through councillors and systems as and when it comes forward, but we can't really predict what that might be at this stage. I think that's fair to say.
If I can just come back on that, I think I prefer John's answer to yours, Nicola. I certainly wouldn't want it sold and then it goes through this very robust system, because I don't believe our planning system is robust. And that's no criticism of the officer. It's far from robust. Far from robust. So I like John's answer, where before we sell it, we have an idea what they want, and then when they sell it, when we get that understanding. So if you respond to Nicola, but hopefully again doubly reassure me.
I think I can't add any more to my comments, but I think we're on the same page here. I think we need to ensure that when we're not selling it to the highest bidder and saying that's it, cheerio. We'll structure the deal so we can have some form of control. We can't have total control, but we'll have some form of. Well, if he has a good use and a good price, we'll not rule anything out.
It's quite a long time since I've been in the Rycote Centre, but at one time it was somewhere I visited quite regularly. I think we inherited it from the county council. It was built in the 1970s. The standard of the construction is a bit substandard, what we'd expect these days. I think it's going to be very difficult to to be able to repurpose it in its current form. I think that I really think that we ought to look at buildings and say, how can we maintain the carbon investment in this building? But this is one where I don't think there's much to invest in. And therefore, I would expect that demolition is going to be what happens next. If we're going to demolish it, we then have a site which is adjacent to other areas of housing that has good connections to the city centre, that has good bus connections, and has shops not far away as well. Isn't this a site that we should be offering and looking at as a potential site for housing development of our own? And if that hasn't been looked at, why haven't we done it?
I think you can rest assured you've got 2 of the 3 councils in Hollywood here. We want to make sure that we get it right for everybody. Councillor Jennings, you want to come in?
I think Lucy's obviously not listening to the conversations that are happening, where the officers have already said that they've assessed that site and that they can't build on it. So I think that's the answer.
Through you, Chair, I thought the site that wasn't suitable is the one on Bridge Street, very close to the brook. I think this one is different.
I think there might be a little bit of confusion, not in my mind. Can you help my colleagues, please, John?
Both sites, obviously, the Bridge Street site we've talked about, we think the better option is for university, use that one. The Rycote Centre, we've worked with colleagues in housing, as Ian's mentioned earlier, and they can't make it viable. So therefore, our option is then to take it to the open market. And like I said earlier, we do work with colleagues to try and work this through before we declare things surplus or bring them to the market.
That's me. Yeah, so Tim Bagshaw from the Economic Growth.
Thanks very much.
Yes, so thank you, Chair. So this is an update really on a report that we provided a couple of meetings back, and it's about the progress of the change of use for the iHub building into a nuclear academy in Derby. The report sort of details that it's an ongoing process. It's a process that we've been undertaking at some pace, as I think most members will be aware, but it's making now some good progress towards its first opening in September and its first cohort of apprentices joining the academy. There's various things ongoing, as the report details, in terms of discussion around heads of terms, around leases, change of use, and the adaptation of the building. But as I say, that's all making progress. Also, of course, really important in all of this is how we've effectively worked with each of the existing tenants of the iHub and worked with them to find alternative solutions, alternative locations for their businesses. And again, that's a process that is ongoing. We have just about now concluded all of the office moves, and so the office areas within the building, the office users, the office area users have all moved to new accommodation, and so the office area and the common areas are now, as we speak this week, beginning their adaptation, led by the University of Derby, to enable the space for, as I say, that sort of first cohort of apprentices arriving in September. There is an MOU, a Memorandum of Understanding, in place with each of the key partners, so that's Rolls-Royce, ourselves, University of Derby, the Nuclear AMRC, the National College for Nuclear. It's not a binding agreement, but it sets out clearly each partner's role in the process. And that's sort of the headlines, really. Oh, sorry, the other sort of key thing then as well is the sort of the workshop space. And that we are working on a sort of a gradual withdrawal or removal or sort of relocation, I suppose I should say, of the workshop users. And we're working on achieving that hopefully by the middle of next year. So that's ongoing, and we have an agreement in place, again, as I say, with the other partners to enable that. The very positive news is that there have been over 1,200 applications for the first year 200 cohort, and over 180 offers have now been made. We're very rapidly moving towards concluding and getting those first 200 apprenticeships or apprentice starters, I suppose I should say, in place. So that's sort of the sort of the current situation. There's then work to do once the thing is in place and is up and running. Certainly, as I say, to sort of sort out the workshops in 2023, but then also to sort of now get out and to engage around Derby. There's already work ongoing with schools across the city, but also to get out into all the communities and to raise awareness of the opportunity that this facility offers. And it'll be in place for at least 10 years and hopefully much longer than that. And there'll be 200 apprenticeship offers are available every year. So hopefully a very positive story for Derby, but a lot of challenging times over the last few weeks, but starting to sort of take shape and getting to place now. Thank you.
Thank you, Tim. Any comments or observations at all for anybody? Nicola, thank you.
I think it's a testament to officers that this has been achieved and fantastic for Derby as a whole in progressing the options for apprenticeships. Having done an apprenticeship myself in the past, I recommend them, as always, but obviously not in nuclear, back in finance. One of the questions I would have is, within the papers, it does detail a little bit there around the move into our Connect Derby and the impact on budgets to that. I suppose my question is that there isn't a lot of detail around the impact, the actual financial impact on the City Council as is, because ultimately iHub did obviously have overheads and costs, but did have tenants, etc. And I just think there is a bit of lack of detail of that in this particular report, and it would be interesting to have that information as and when possible, please.
Okay, over to you, Tim.
So absolutely it is our intention to ensure that the rental income that we currently achieve from the building is maintained through the new tenants who will be led by the University of Derby, essentially. There has been a small cost to us, City Council, to move the office tenants into new offices within the Connect Derby estate. But we're working very actively with other partners in terms of cost contribution to the workshops, which is a more expensive item. There's machinery to move, heavy machinery to move, and there won't be any impact on the City Council from those financially from that move.
Thank you, Tim. Okay, Hardiel and then Alison. Hardiel.
Yeah, I mean, I think we've said it before in this meeting, and this is update progress report. It's a great idea, and we need to land it, get the academy in Derby to put us on the map, and to emulate the ambition we have for Derby to get as many new and major projects into Derby as possible. So, and it looks as if it's going to progress at speed. And the report obviously indicates that there may be some flexibility required regarding leasing, and I think that's going to be acceptable in this circumstance. So I really welcome it. The bit that I'm still just to get confirmation, I think it's hinted in the report that all the tenants, particularly are being housed and will be in a timely manner negotiated into appropriate accommodation, and there were some tenants who had longer term leases, and that was being worked on. Can I just have some reassurance on that, really?
Thank you. Tim?
So yes, absolutely. As I say, all the office tenants have basically successfully moved. We had a couple of issues, but Rolls-Royce in particular very helpful with that, and that's all been resolved now. There is an ongoing piece of work in terms of the workshop tenants, and obviously, you know, what we're looking to do there is make sure that the move is right for each of those workshop tenants, that it helps and supports their business going forward. Part of the challenge is just finding suitable accommodation, but again, we're making some good progress on that. So it's an ongoing process, and you know, I'm quite confident that sort of by the middle of next year it'll be resolved properly.
Thanks, Tim. Alison.
Thank you, Chair. I just echo what Councillor Dinser said. I welcome this development for Derby. It's a very positive extension to Rolls-Royce's functioning, and also it's that nice synergy between the University of Derby and local industry, producing industries of the future. So I welcome this, but I'm glad we have the reassurance that the council are helping the existing tenants to move, and obviously I imagine we would all support that every effort is made to help the workshop tenants find somewhere suitable. Thanks.
Thanks, Alison. Matt.
Thank you, Chair. Can I put a recommendation forward?
Please do.
I would like the Scrutiny Board to welcome this report and the immense potential it will offer young people to enter into a highly skilled long-term career and further bolster our world-leading reputation as a city that drives new technology and cutting-edge manufacturing, which I've just written, Chair.
Okay, Nicola, you're second now. Okay, I think that's pretty uncontentious and positive, and I'm getting nods. Can we let's take it to the vote? Those in favour, please show. I think that's unanimous. Have you captured that, Stephen? Thank you very much. Okay, that's great. Thank you very much for that. Okie dokie. Thanks very much, Tim.
Pleasure. Thank you.
Moving on to item 12, Cycle Race Tour Series. Now then, we've got Claire. Hi, Claire. Thank you.
Good evening. So another positive news story, not least because I'll step up a gear for the meeting. I will get the wheels turning and we'll speed through the report with ease. Pink gilet and lycra at the ready. Right, so this report is seeking the necessary approvals to submit bids for 3 high-profile events: the Tour Series, the Women's Tour and the Tour of Britain. The bid looks to host the Tour Series, which is over a 3-year period. The Women's Tour is in 2023 only, and the Tour of Britain in 2024. The bid is to become a host city, and the responsibilities that come with that are things that you'd expect: managing the road closures, the traffic management, the stewards, the first aid, etc. And the vision is to further develop the Cycle Race Series, to bring cycling to the heart of British cities, inspiring new fans and helping promote cycling in all its forms to the British public, removing barriers and also creating opportunities for health and well-being, including also environmentally friendly opportunities by promoting having car-free ride-to-work days, for example. We think that this will inspire children and promote active, sustainable transportation, as well as creating media coverage of these high-profile sports. The target market is for families, and it's a family-friendly environment. It's a free sporting event, and it looks to also attract future stars for cycling, as well as bringing into the city existing elite cycling champions. There are a number of economic benefits that are identified in the report, and it also complements the excellent work already being done by colleagues in Cycle Derby throughout the year. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Claire. Yes, these certainly seem very, very exciting proposals that would create a real focus on the city centre and be a real enjoyment to many hundreds, if not thousands of people. So you've got all the recommendations contained in the report. Are there any questions people wish to raise? Hardiel, would you like to come in?
4 point. First of all, welcome this, and hopefully we're successful with the submission for all the different cycling events here. The only thing I've got is just a question, Claire. 4.5. Could you? I don't think that's right what it says, but it says all the responsibilities we have. One of them is public border policing. Is that a new type of policing, or is that public order policing?
Claire? Yes.
I believe it's public order policing. Thank you.
A Freudian slip. I thought we had Priti Patel in the audience for a minute there.
I know a little bit about policing.
Claire.
I thought, yeah.
No, it's
never
Claire.
had a border
it isn't
police.
Priti. No, I don't mean it's not Priti. I mean it's not Priti Patel. Yeah. Yeah. Thank you, Hardiel. As on the ball as ever. Hardiel and then Nicola.
I hope that the aspirations here of persuading people to cycle more because they've watched really speedy cyclists works. I've yet to be convinced. The comments about 2012 Olympics didn't manage to inspire us to be a country of energetic sports people, but we can hope. What my question was regarding the renewal of roads to make sure they are beautifully smooth enough to be ridden on at speed, because some of our roads at the moment are not as good as they might be. Though I must say, Utoxeter New Road from the road ditch into town is quite lovely at the moment. If they were all like that, it would be superb and there'd be no issues. But is there going to be additional budget provided from somebody, or have we got to find it ourselves to ensure that the race roads are to a very good standard, and what the implications are going to be for repairing potholes and renewal of roads elsewhere?
Well, I'm hoping that the route will be the refurbished Keddison Road, which I got done with Alison's help, and Duffy Road, and it's going to go round the Broadway.
You did it, did you, Chair?
I mean, did you do that? Did you dig that up yourself? So joking apart, you do make an interesting point. Claire, in terms of the roads, Lucy does make a reasonable point that there are some roads which are a little bit dubious and could be a danger to cyclists. What sort of inspection will there be on the routes, and what can we do to,
Thank you, Chair. So the responsibility for pothole repairs, road quality and sweeping does become the host city's responsibility. We would work with the event organisers to identify the route, and then obviously dependent on that route we'll take an audit to determine what works are potentially required and whether these would be already in the programme for highways or not.
Would we be able to use some of the levelling up money to level up the potholes? Okay, Nicola.
Thank you, Chair. Although I wasn't around to see you digging up Kedliston Road personally, I did think that was a part of some of the fantastic government funding that we've received to improve our road networks across the city, and a fantastic improvements and pots that we have. On a serious note, though, I think this is really positive. I think if we can share some of in the glory of current recent sporting achievements like the Lionesses, and as we look at the second item of the women's tour event, I think it's really positive for the city, and it should be brought to us as and do everything we can to do that. I think I would like to explore the costings and to just say that obviously sponsorship and funding sources are being identified as within there. I'd like that to be a lot bigger in big bold capital letters, that if we are successful, that sponsorships and funding sources should be identified to try and mitigate any costs to the city in general.
So just coming back on the sponsorship, if I may, the events attract national sponsors, and that is taken care of through the event organisers themselves. What Derby can do is attract local sponsors. So I urge people to get behind these events and come forward, giving some local businesses the opportunity to raise their profile through these magnificent world-class events.
Thank you, Claire. Alison.
Thank you. My question's in a similar vein, really. I mean, obviously, I welcome the possibility of having these events in the city. I think we need events in the city for people. I think cycling is popular in Derby. And so I think this is a good initiative. And I can see that there's an investment by the council, which is then bringing in spending financially, it brings in spending in the city as it's outlined in the report, and that's potentially very positive. And I realise you are maybe seeking local sponsors, but I just wondered, because very often the council, it is its duty to support and keep the city vibrant, and I very much support that, but very often the council pays out the capital funding and then it's more the sort of local businesses who benefit, and that's positive. But I'm just wondering if there are ways that the council can also recoup some money, not just through sponsorship, through the events, the money that it has to lay out to put on the events. Thank you.
Claire, is there anything you wish to come back on there?
So any local sponsorship can go towards the cost that the council's incurring, or enhance the event experience. So we'd like to have activities around it. We can also consider commercial opportunities such as catering, where we have now got an excellent catering services manager who will be able to look at the opportunities for food and drink sales.
Yeah, I think there is general positivity and excitement about this. And I think across party, again, we want to make sure we're getting good value for money, because the very least it's going to be is £250,000. And what we don't want, and hopefully it won't be, is a one-day wonder where people come in for a few minutes, see them cycle around, and then they're gone to the next city. And so is there any way that we can negotiate with the organisers where if somebody was going to invest, some medium-sized firm in Derby, where they can spend even a very small amount of time with some of the cyclists, or they'll be wishing round then off again? I think it's just trying to look for those photo opportunity for firms who say, well, if I'm going to be putting 10, 20, 30, 40,000 pounds up, I want to spend 5 or 10 minutes with some of the cyclists or have my photograph taken with them. Is there anything that we can do on that, or is that going to be difficult, Claire?
We can certainly work with the event organisers to see what package opportunities are available. These are tried and tested events, so they are a very commercially minded organisation. And so we can, learn from their experiences, having put these events on for a number of years now. It's a very exciting opportunity for us to be bringing these event organisers even to our city to consider this kind of event. So we really would look forward to submitting strong bids and them being considered to get the maximum benefits for our city, whether that be for the cycling, for the businesses, or for our economy.
Yeah, I do remember, I think we had it was long before you were here, Claire, where the milk race came through Derby. I can remember sort of there was, I don't know how much that cost us or who organised that, but it was a similar sort of event. So I'm not sure what the benefits of the city were at the time, but hey-ho. Councillor Jennings and Lucy, and then we'll need to move on.
Sorry, just to clarify one of your comments about people just cycling through and going away. So could I ask the officer to actually clarify? I think at least one of these bids is for Derby to be a stop city and at the end of the race, yeah?
Yes, thank you. So the intention is to try to get a number of people into the city initially. That's for the start stage elsewhere and we want to bid for a finish stage. So you bring people into the city, hopefully having a fantastic time, doing activities and events, spending in pubs and restaurants, having a really good time with family and friends, and then hopefully have the end stage in the city, which enables people then to maximise the benefit of seeing fantastic cyclists, finish the stage, and then people staying over in the hotels. So that would be our current aim, and whether that will play out like that is something we're hopeful to do.
Can anything be linked in with the velodrome in terms of the circuit or activities that go on before or after at the velodrome in terms of commercial attractiveness? It's worth exploring.
Yes, so we could link in with the Derby Arena, we can link in with Cycle Derby to put on activities in the city centre, and we can link in with cultural partners as well. So it's up for discussion on how we create the maximum benefit for building around the event as well as hosting the event.
Thanks, Claire. Lucy, I think that's it then we'll draw it to a close. Thank you.
Chair, I just want to come back to the potential for the costs of making sure our roads are good enough, and to have a recommendation to Cabinet that they include consideration of the potential costs of bringing cycle routes up to race standard as part of the preparation of the next budget, just so it doesn't get forgotten.
Thank you, Chair. So this is the monthly report that details with the financial approvals that are required for 3 substantive items this month. The first one is in relation to the Transforming Cities and the bike share project. And the bike share is a joint project between ourselves and Nottingham City Council. And capital funding has already been secured for this project by the Department for Transport. And the bike share project had been already approved by Cabinet on the 10th of June 2020. It was originally intended that Nottingham City Council would support the Derby element of the bike share scheme as part of the business case, but following legal and procurement advice, the two authorities are now going to contract directly with the bidder, and therefore the Nottingham City Council are reallocating the funding of up to 1.266 million to Derby. The procurement process will be a competitive procedure with negotiation, so that means that there will be a negotiation phase prior to receiving the bids. The report is seeking recommendations to accept the funding to the maximum value of 1.266 million from Nottingham City Council, that the addition of the bike share project is added to the 2022-23 capital programme, and that we have approval to award the funding as a capital grant to the successful bidder of the bike share project following that tender exercise. The second element of the report is in relation to a capital bid to the DFE for a children's home capital bid. The DFE have invited local authorities to apply for matched capital funding to create additional provision in children's homes for children and young people in their area. And the bids are to be submitted to the DFE by the deadline of the 3rd of September 2022. This particular scheme is in relation to address the current shortfalls that we have in placements for some of our complex needs and children in care, and it's to ensure that we have sufficiency within our geographical area. So the proposal is for us to put in a bid with a joint consortium bid with Nottinghamshire County Council. Our match funding element will be circa 300,000. We have previously submitted a similar capital bid to the DFE, which was unsuccessful. So this is building on that bid, and we already have the allocation from that previous grant application for the match funding. So the additional funding sought is already included within the capital programme. The third item is in relation to the SEND capital strategy, and this was a report that was considered by Cabinet on the 13th of July 2022 in terms of the phase 1 allocations of that report. What this report is seeking approval for is to add additions to the capital programme for the SEND funding following a DFE announcement on the 29th of March, where we were allocated £9.1 million over 2 financial years, 4.7 million in this year 22-23, and an additional 4.3 million in 23-24. The report in July also identified the first phase of the SEND capital programme was around capital projects for Ivy House Special School and Kingsmead Special School. The recommendations of this report is to seek approval for amendments to the capital programme for the additional grant funding that we've received of 9.1 million, to approve the capital projects for Ivy House and Kingsmead as contained within the report of the 13th of July, and also to seek approval that we will award a capital grant to the Shaw Education Trust to deliver the capital works associated with the Ivy House scheme. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Alison. Any comments or observations from anybody, please? I don't think there are, actually, so thank you very much for that, Alison. Thank you for your attendance this evening. I hope you can keep cool in these very humid temperatures. It's going to get a bit fresher tomorrow, I understand. Thank you.